Warning, I swear a lot.
It is 10 in the AM, almost exactly, and you're watching The Foreman. I am your host, Foreman. Today, I wanted to talk about the difficulty in video games, challenges, and really why I like them. So I guess my stance on this is quite obvious. But before we begin, I want to make a few statements just to clarify things, and some of these will probably be their own topics in the future. It is perfectly fine. There is absolutely nothing wrong with playing games on an easier difficulty. Playing games on a harder difficulty does not mean you get games better, that you're a better gamer, that you're a superior gamer. And you know what the idea is. Like, you've seen the Dark Souls community be, get good and all that crap. We all say it as a joke, but the reality of the situation is, like, I personally believe Dark Souls should have more accessibility options. You should be able to tone down the difficulty. Not for me, I don't want it. I love the challenge, but I think more people should be allowed to enjoy that game, and enjoy many games. I believe challenges should be customizable in video games, because not everyone picks up a video game to stress themselves. But that is a topic for another day. I simply wanted to clarify, in case you're relatively new to the channel, or you simply just don't know what my stance is on this kind of thing, in case you thought I was that kind of elitist douchebag. Nah, man. I don't think games should be more challenging. I just love the challenge. I love a challenge in games. For me, it makes the experience. It is very important for me, in most cases, not all cases, but most cases, for a game to be challenging, because that is how I become invested. Some of my best and most favorite moments within games have come from moments where I was truly challenged and didn't believe I was going to win. Though funnily enough, I don't like online multiplayer because it's too hard. I don't know why. I'm willing to admit that I'm inconsistent, but when it comes to fighting the AI, when it comes to playing a game, to fighting the enemies within a game, I do love a challenge. And this why I like games like Total War, which is quite well known to be quite a difficult strategy game, especially if you're not good at strategy games. And while I love strategy games, I'm not good at them. Obviously, I love the Souls series, goes without saying. This Darkest Dungeon, this Fire Emblem, which was one of the biggest examples recently of a difficult game that I really enjoy because of its use of permadeath, which is great, and maybe one of the earliest examples of permadeath? Not the earliest, I'm sure there was some that came before it, but it's gotta be pretty goddamn early. It was 2002, and they had characters, well, Binding Blade was 2002. I bet previous Fire Emblem games had permadeath, but Fire Emblem seems like one of the earliest examples I can think of games with permadeath, with named characters who could die permanently, and you just kind of have to deal with it. Let me know, what is your earliest example that you know of permadeath, because I'd be curious to know, but I am getting sidetracked. Permadeath itself might be a topic for another day as well, because I fucking love that mechanic, but like I said, we're getting off topic. I'm talking about the challenge. So, I have actually done a video on this before. Ages and ages ago, I had a concept similar to Foreman Talks, in which I wanted to regularly do videos where I talk about stuff. Back then, I used a face cam. And I recorded these fully face cam. This is much easier, and this is a much more relaxing way to do it, and I genuinely prefer it. And I honestly think these videos are better, but, that's just me. But back then, I talked about Shadow of War and Fallout 4, which was hilarious because they rhymed, as my examples of games that benefit from being played on a harder difficulty. Games that aren't necessarily inherently challenging, but if you do play on that harder difficulty, it adds a lot more to the overall experience. I'll summarize those quickly, but there's more games I want to talk about. The reason why I like Shadow of War so much on harder difficulties is because it really conveyed the threats that Middle-earth faced. Similar reasons for both games, to be honest, so that's why I'm only going to be talking briefly about this. But in Shadow of War, and Shadow of Mordor, I suppose, but I played Shadow of War, you play as Talion, and Talion is the fucking Gravewalker, which is an absurd title, and a rad one at that, and he is, like, infused with the spirit of an ancient elven smith or something, and he is an ungodly strong fighter, like probably better than Aragorn, and Aragorn was already an absolute stacked up unit. But when you play that game on Gravewalker, or one of the harder difficulties, you can get dropped in 2 or 3 hits, which is realistic, because they used Uruks instead of like normal orcs and stuff, it was not entirely canon, and they took liberties with it, which was fine. I actually really enjoyed it. It really conveyed how dangerous your foes were, combined with the fact that Mordor churns these things out like cheap watches, you know? You took down 10 Uruks, that's great. Mordor just pumped out like 50 or 100 or 200 or 500 or 1,000. They're always a threat. That was why the focus of the game was converting the Uruks rather than killing them, because you needed to build your own army to fight Mordor. This was literally the only way to do it, or it was perceived by the characters in the game as being the only way to do it. And if you play it on easy, you're like, why? Because I can mow these guys down fucking wholesale, I can kill the captains, no one's a challenge. But when you play it on Gravewalker, you understand the threat, because they're a threat to you as well. The only reason they're not more of a threat to you is because the Gravewalker is, in essence, immortal and will come back from death, but you will die a lot. And if you were a normal guy, you'd straight up be dead. And that'd be the end of it. Having that difficulty, this is why I enjoy challenge, because often a harder difficulty in a game further reinforces the narrative of the game itself. The game can sit there all at once and try and tell you how much of a threat your opponents are. But if your opponents are a threat, you're not going to feel it, you know? If the Uruks literally can't fucking touch me, I'm not going to believe anyone in the game when they say that this is some sort of grave threat to Middle-earth. I'm not going to buy it, because they're not. They're straight up just aren't. I'll see a character struggle with an Uruk and I'll be like, fucking come on, man. He's a wimp. Or better yet, you'll see cutscenes where someone gets overpowered by a standard enemy, and in this case an Uruk, and you'll be like, why? I've just murdered like 50 of them. It's fucking easy. When playing on harder difficulties, you'll still murder like 50 of them, but you have to be way smarter about it, and you have to be way better at it, which forces you to acknowledge the fact that they are indeed a threat. And when you see a character get blindsided in a cutscene or something, you're like, oh fuck, yeah, that dude's dead. Because if that happened to me, I would be dead as well. Another thing, before we move on from Shadow of War, is that it was a great way of, once again, conveying that the Uruks are a threat, by simply looking at the logistics of the situation in conjunction with how powerful your enemies are. So, in the world of Middle-earth, in the world of Lord of the Rings and what have you, I don't know how long it takes to make an Uruk. Not long is the impression I get. Not long at all. And if you remember when in the movies, when Lurtz is created, when Saruman is creating the Uruk-hai, they are created fully sized. They are human adult physiology from the moment of creation. Now compare that to a human who has to, you know, a woman has to get pregnant, she has to carry the child for 9 months, that kid has to be born, that kid has to grow up. Now, if you're really desperate, you might put him on the battlefield at 14 years old. That would be the lowest level of being reasonable, and I wouldn't call that being reasonable, but you know, desperate times. I think in the movie, like, someone even younger is given like a helmet or something just to convey how fucked the situation is. But for all intents and purposes, your average age for a standard, like, soldier/recruit would be like 16, right? Like, that would be the ideal age to properly get started. 18 would probably be more ideal, but once again, dire situations, you make do with what you got. Now, Uruks are born, they seem to be born at full maturity, and I don't know if you've noticed, but they're fucking huge, right? Let's take a standard 16-year-old, as we're establishing here, Gondor recruit versus a newly born Uruk. Who do you think's gonna win? I don't think it's the Gondorian, do you? He hasn't even fully developed yet, he's still got a couple years before he's fully developed. An Uruk is stronger than a man anyway, so you need better skill and weapons in order to kill Uruks. And to be honest, Gondor really has to make use of better tactics in order to beat Uruks, because fighting them one-on-one is not a good idea. So you get this situation where you understand, you're given context for how fucked Gondor is. Because not only are Uruks better than men pound for pound, but they're being mass-produced. We're outnumbered significantly. And you don't really get that unless you play it on hard, because, well, I mean, you could, alright, I'm not saying it's impossible for you to get that unless you play it on hard, but you don't really feel it until you play it on hard, and you have an Uruk grunt, you get an Uruk grunt, or better yet, an Uruk slave, drop you in 2 or 3 hits. And you're like, wow, everyone's a threat. Literally everyone's a threat. You can't ignore anything. The other example I used for that video was Fallout 4. Now, Fallout 4, for similar reasons, is a fantastic way to have a harder difficulty, give you context for how much trouble the Commonwealth is in and how much of a shithole the place is. Because, you know, in Fallout 4, when you play it standard, you can pick up a fuck ton of guns and you're mowing your way through raiders and feral ghouls and super mutants and what have you. And it's an adventure, right? It's an RPG adventure. Yes, it can get challenging, but for the most part, it's designed to be a fun, wasteland traveling, enemy shooting, gun collecting, leveling up experience. And that's fine. If you want to play Fallout that way, that's fine. It's a fun way to play. But playing Fallout on survival mode, once again, informs the player of how dire the situation truly is. When you go to a group of settlers and they're like, a gang of raiders has really been giving us trouble, can you go take care of them? When you're playing on normal difficulty, you're like, yeah, sure, I don't know why you can't fucking do it yourself, because these guys are practically jumping in front of bullets, but whatever, yeah, I'll go take care of it, it's a side quest, whatever. But when you play on survival, you're like, okay, yeah, this is a full thing. This isn't just, oh, I'll wander over there, take him out and come back. You know, and fast travel, you're like, right, I have to plan this. This is like an expedition. This is a journey. This is a mission. I have to get down there, which is more dangerous than it sounds, by the way. I can't tell you the amount of times playing on survival I've been blindsided by a pack of dogs and died. And by the way, in survival mode, you only save when you sleep. So you really have to plan your journeys if you want to not have to do 20 minutes of traveling again. But you finally get there. Now, Corvega, the Corvega assembly plant is my favorite example of this. Because you arrive there, and Corvega's a big place, and it's filled with raiders. And if you attack that place incorrectly on survival, you will die. Because there will simply be too many of them. There will be too many bullets flying, and a Molotov will pretty much kill you in one. If you get hit by a Molotov, you're practically dead. If you're not dead, then you're at like 10% health with a crippled limb. And most raiders carry Molotovs, and they don't hesitate to use them. So you have to plan it. You have to use stealth. There is an overpass, like a motorway, as it were. You know, those raised up. I think it's literally called an overpass, those roads. But there is one of those opposite Corvega, and there's a few buildings in there with a bed where you can rest and save. But more importantly, or maybe not more importantly, but equally as importantly, you can survey the situation. Have a look at Corvega. There's a raider here. There's a raider there. There's a couple raiders up high in elevated positions. There's one down there patrolling around. They have a turret. They have a spotlight, which they use to try and track people who are trying to sneak in. All of these things are important. You need to keep an eye. You need to plan your attack. And honestly, I would say, I'm sure you could beat survival mode quite handily if you went for a fucking tank build where you're a big strong boy with big strong guns. But I've often found that stealth is the way to do it. Not entirely, you don't have to constantly be hidden, but you really want to start the fight. You don't want to be attacked, you want to attack. You want to pick out key targets and remove them. And you want to remove as many of them as you can before a firefight takes place. And then there's the aspect of getting into Corvega. You have to pick the right entrance or you're going to die. I've hit Corvega on survival mode multiple times. There are multiple ways to enter Corvega to the point where I know for a fact I haven't found them all. Corvega is actually a really well-designed place. It's weird, because there's not many places in Fallout 4 like that. Corvega is very well done. But if you go into the wrong room, like there is literally the main door to Corvega, and there's some stairs going up to a room above it, and you would think, the less obvious one would be the stairs. The upper level would be the smart place to sneak in. But you go in there, and you're walking on a grated floor. The bullets can fly through, and enemies can see you. There's like 6 to 8 raiders in there. They have a turret. If you try and fight them in there, it doesn't work. And you have to be able to recognize that. You need to be able to look at a situation and be like, can I fight them here? And you need to look at the enemy numbers and be like, can I take them? Or do I need to be smart about this? It's an involving, engaging gameplay experience that makes you feel like you earned your victory. Especially when you have to be smart about it sometimes. The quests to take down the raiders of Corvega, which I believe is given to you by the settlers of Ten Pines Bluff, I believe that's an established one, that's always the same. They're not telling you to kill every raider, they're telling you to kill the leader, who I believe is called Jared. So, plan with that in mind. You don't have to kill every raider, you don't have to clear the place out, you have to get to Jared, kill him, and get out. And if you can do that without being detected, you've done it. Job done. And bearing in mind that you have a much lower carrying capacity on survival, there's no point clearing out the entirety of Corvega because you can't carry it all anyway. You may as well pick your targets, go in there, kill what you need to kill, grab what you think will help you, and sneak back out. And it's like, I don't know, the way I describe it makes it sound inferior, actually, to playing it on normal, because it's like, well, why wouldn't you want to kill them all and take all the stuff? Because there is a novelty to having to be forced to work with the situation that is being dealt to you, being forced to work to your own limitations. That place is full of raiders, maybe you can kill them all, but it would take a long time, it wouldn't be worth it, and it's not necessary. You have to approach it much more smart. And when you have to deal with this situation, when you are fighting 6 to 8 raiders and they basically fill you with bullets, it makes the fact that the settlers asked you for help make a lot more sense. You're like, yeah, no, they couldn't handle this. Of course they need my help. How do you fight this? Imagine if you play survival, imagine the situation I just described, except the raiders approach you. And they're like, give us your food or money or whatever, or we'll kill you. And you're like, well, I can't take 6 to 8 raiders. I have to give them my fucking money. Combine that with, I can't remember what they're called. I think they're called the Abernathy's over at the farm west of Red Rocket. Their daughter was like, they were approached by raiders and their daughter was like, you know what, I'm going to tell these guys to fuck off and they can't take our stuff. And they shot her. And she's dead. That's what happens. And the farmers can't be like, oh my god, they shot our daughter, we're gonna take them out. What the fuck are they gonna do? They got like pipe pistols and there's like 3 of them and there's like 6 to 10 or more raiders. It makes you understand, it makes you sympathize with the fact that the people of the Commonwealth can't deal with these situations because they are so hopelessly outnumbered and hopelessly outgunned. It's what makes your presence in the world so important. It's why people follow the general. It's because he stands up, or she, you know, whatever gender, they stand up for the people, and they are one of the only people who can fight back. And guess what? It's not easy. It's actually really hard. It's the closest you'll find to actually having to do this shit in real life. Imagine in real life if you had to go to a building with like 10 or more hostile people with it all carrying guns, and you had to take them down. Are you just gonna walk in through the front door? No, you wouldn't. Not if you wanted to win and live. You'd have to be smart about it. At least the game does have the suspension of disbelief in that you can come back when you die, you load your save, but it does at least make you fear death by making you only able to save by sleeping. Which means if you don't find a bed, you need to look at situations and be like, is this even worth the risk? If I die, I'm going to lose like 20 minutes to an hour of progress. I'm going to go so far back. It makes you fear unfavorable encounters and forces you to either analyze the situation and be like, no, I can't deal with this, I'm going to have to come back later. Or if that's not an option, you're like, okay, I need to get past this. And it forces you to think outside the box and be like, well, running and gunning isn't the way to go. Should I snipe them? I don't think I can snipe them because there's too many and they'll know I'm here. Can I get around them? You'll look at the situation and be like, can I get around it? Well, it's quite a narrow way through. There aren't many ways through and there are a lot of enemies. Yes, it is possible to sneak through, but it's risky. And if they catch you out while you're trying to sneak through, you're fucking done. You might be able to improv your way out, but that's not something to rely on. So you have to look at the situation even more, see what you're carrying. Do I have any explosives? Can I wipe out a bunch of them in one go? Can I don't know, can you set up a kill zone, a choke point? Can you snipe one but have mines laid down in the paths where they would get to you? You have to lay traps, you have to think about it, you have to be careful. I would say in survival there is no situation, if you're smart about it, there is no situation in which you simply are fucked, right? You can always, not always, I'm sure there are exceptions, but typically you can sneak out or get away or snipe. There are things you can do if you're smart about it, but the game forces you to be smart about it, and that's what's fun. For me, anyway, and that's what informs the player of just how treacherous the Commonwealth is. Try fighting a super mutant on survival, right? Good fucking luck. You better have a good gun. or you're in trouble. I once had to fight a super mutant in melee on survival. I had a life or death knockout drag out brawl with a super mutant, and it wasn't a special super mutant. No, it was a normal super mutant with a big stick, but he was in melee, and that's dangerous. It takes like 2 swings from that guy to kill me. And I had I believe I grabbed a sledgehammer because I knew he was coming towards me. I was like, fuck, I need a weapon. That'll do. Grabbed a sledgehammer and fended him off and won. And you know how satisfying that was? To have fought that super mutant in close combat and to have somehow managed to pull out and win. You wouldn't get that in the normal, in playing on normal difficulty, because you'd be like, yeah, of course I killed the fucking super mutant. He's just another super mutant. He's one of millions. Who cares? Meanwhile, in this one, I was stood there holding a sledgehammer limply in my other offhand with my right arm broken and my health at like 20%. Probably suffering from some kind of disease, because oh my god, survival loves to hit you with diseases. That's a thing. You have to deal with diseases as well, which further forces you to consider your tactical options. You're like, well, I need medicine as well. And if you don't have the chemist perk, which allows you to create antibiotics, you're going to have to try and scavenge for medicine to cure your diseases. Stim packs make you thirsty. You can't spam them. Purified water is actually quite easy to get, but you need to make sure you have a stock of them, and they take up weight. Food is a thing, of course. You need food, but most crap food, like, I don't know, fucking Blamco shit or whatever, mac and cheese or squirrel bits or whatever, don't do much food and give you rads, and you can get sick from eating them. So you have to kind of try and, if preferably you want to prepare your own food, you want to hunt animals in the world and cook it, because that food is good and you'll never get ill from it, and it doesn't give you rads or anything, but in a pinch, you might have to eat that stuff. You have to weigh up the risks. A lot of it is resource management, a lot of it is risk assessment, a lot of it is planning, and sometimes it's just flying off the seat of your pants. I didn't really mean to make this video entirely about the last one I did on this exact same subject and say the exact same things, but it's because I'm so passionate about it. It's because I enjoyed it so goddamn much that I just love talking about it. But in terms of difficulty in video games, XCOM is an excellent example of what makes that fun, because XCOM honestly is just quite hard in general. I've never played the game on easy, because that's just not me. I imagine for some people that's still quite difficult, because XCOM isn't afraid to kick you when you're down. Combined with permadeath, in which you can lose some or all of your best soldiers in one go, and the fact that the enemy is continuously getting stronger and you have to try and research your own shit to match them. And to be honest, I'm referring to XCOM 2 in my head, but this refers to any XCOM, really. You know, the primary gameplay loop is near enough the same. The challenge is near enough the same. But having people pull off clutch shots that save the mission, pulling off unorthodox maneuvers that allow your soldiers to get away, like the Long War. I talked about the Long War in the XCOM 2 mods video, which I wouldn't even recommend checking out because that video is a fucking rambling mess. But the Long War does so much to infuse a higher difficulty with the ability to approach situations in many different ways and resolve them in many different ways. There have been missions when I've been playing Long War more recently. I approached a mission where it's like, I don't think my squad can take out the garrison, the enemy units that are on the map already here. I don't think they can take them out, and I don't think they can take them out before reinforcements arrive, at which point the situation will get, as us professionals like to say, truly fucky. It's not gonna happen, right? They're gonna die. I'll lose everyone, and the mission won't be accomplished. Like, we won't have succeeded at the objective, and we really need this objective. It's important that we complete this mission. So I didn't kill everyone on the map. I got as close as I could to the fucking objective, achieved the objective, and then called for extraction and had my soldiers desperately try and hold the position until they could get out, which creates a whole different dynamic from how you normally play XCOM, where instead of tactically taking out the enemies and achieving the objective and riding off into the sunset, you get these situations where you're desperately holding a position, desperately attempting to get everyone out alive, and sometimes realizing that you're gonna have to sacrifice someone if you want the rest of the squad to get out. You either lose one person or you lose them all. But it's about being able to recognize that situation and having the emotional balls to actually do it. Because I'm someone who hates losing things in strategy games, right? I will always try and keep my units alive, much to the detriment of literally everyone. So someone like me is especially profound because I have to take moments to be like, I can't save everyone. Someone has to die. That's it. I have to choose. I have to acknowledge the fact that I could lose everyone if I don't sacrifice someone. But it's also a case of, well, what if I'm wrong? I have to look at it and be like, am I just throwing this person away for no reason? Could we actually get away without sacrificing anyone? You have to weigh it up. You have to weigh up your emotional investment, the actual material and personnel investment / risk of loss, equipment, because soldier dies, their equipment stays on the battlefield, and in the long war, you don't buy squad upgrades for guns and armor, you purchase guns and armor individually, much like in XCOM Enemy Unknown and XCOM Enemy Within, which means if you lose a soldier who's carrying Predator armor with a mag rifle, you're not getting it back. You have a limited amount of them, and you've just lost it. You're gonna have to spend resources to build more. Not to mention, losing anyone of like a sergeant rank or up is a pretty major blow, I'd say. XCOM does this fantastically. I have recently started a series on Fire Emblem The Binding Blade, and I think that this game, bearing in mind it was made in 2002 for the fucking Game Boy Advance, is an exceptional example of a challenging game that is enjoyable, because every single unit you have in the game has a name, and they have at least 1 or 2 lines, you know, like text lines in the game. They have some sort of, regardless how minor, because sometimes it is really minor, established personality. It could be as simple as 1 or 2 lines, or they could be important to the story, and from what I can tell, each unit has a situation where they can talk to other units to flesh out the relationship between those 2 characters and flesh out the personalities of the involved characters, therefore giving them more personality, which makes it really sad when they fucking die. And they will. You would have to be exceptionally good at Fire Emblem, and I'd say you probably have to have beaten it before, to be able to get through a game without losing anyone, especially if you weren't loading saves. I don't want to spoil anything specific for the series in case you decide you want to go watch it, but yeah, I've lost a few people. Some quite important ones as well. Some quite good ones as well. Very important, very good units that I have lost. And at time of recording, the most recent video that I did, I strongly considered playing up to where I was off screen and continuing the series from there with less dead characters, because I had lost such good ones. But I kept playing that mission. I had to beat it, you know, I was recording. And as I played, my normal way of thinking when it comes to these sort of things sort of came back as I was doing it, and I was like, no, this is what happened. This is the game. This is the intended experience, really, of doing it this way. Your soldiers are supposed to die, and you're supposed to be making do with what you have left. You're supposed to be trying to minimize casualties and get the most out of every single soldier, and in fact, losses and casualties force you to make the most of everyone on the battlefield. Would I have sent in this particular guy to take down the head of the enemy forces? Normally, no. I would have used that other guy, but that other guy's dead. They died. I have to try, and that leader has to go. The mission won't be complete until I kill that leader, which means I have to think up a new way, whilst attempting to minimize risk to everyone else, of taking that guy out, hoping that I don't lose more soldiers. I do wonder at what point Fire Emblem just becomes, or more specifically the Binding Blade, just becomes unbeatable. Like, how many units can I lose where it simply does not become possible to continue? Because from the looks of things, the game isn't going to stop me, right? I accidentally loaded into that castle in somewhere, I can't remember what it's called, Lyria, I don't know. But I accidentally loaded into that with only 3 units, and the game let me do it. You can do it. It's not advised, but you can. And I do appreciate being given that kind of freedom, but at what point does the game just become unbeatable? How many units do I have to lose? I think if I lost the Axe Brothers, it would become unwinnable. It would actually become unwinnable because there are so many goddamn spears. Losing all my cavalry would be a serious blow as well, but that risk, that potential for failure, is what makes it so interesting. It's what makes it fun to play. It gives every battle, every interaction stakes. And you're not just sat there like, oh, well, I'll play, and if I lose, then whatever. It's like, no, this actually carries weight. I need to try. I could screw myself down the road if I don't think about it, put my all into it, and that's what makes challenging games so interesting. Darkest Dungeon is weirdly enough not as much of an example as this as you'd think. Yes, Darkest Dungeon is hard, for sure. You'll never hear me say it's not hard, but unless you are playing on like Stygian or Blood Moon, at which point you have a hero death and time limit, you'd have to try really hard to completely fuck yourself out of a Darkest Dungeon campaign. You can always recover. The only cost is time, but I do still love Darkest Dungeon for its challenge, and you never want to lose heroes, and losing heroes is devastating, which forces you to be careful and to consider things and to play tactically. And that's what I love about these kinds of things. This might not be an example you guys are expecting, but Fight Night, Round 3 and Round 4 are excellent examples of higher difficulties making the game so much more interesting, because there is nothing, in my opinion, once again, this is all in my opinion, if you don't agree, that's fine. But in my opinion, there's nothing interesting about blitzing through a career in Fight Night and just first round TKOing or knocking out every single boxer you come across. That's not fun, that's not engaging. I want every fight to be a fight. In real life, even if one boxer is considered better than the other, fights are usually fairly close, like competitions. Because we're all humans and therefore we all have similar levels of capabilities. Sometimes they are just one-sided, but for the most part, a fight is a fight. And there's nothing quite like fighting to 12 rounds in a boxing game and have it be decided at the end and finding out you just managed to clutch ahead, or being down on points and scoring that lucky hit that knocks them down and allows you to win. These moments would not exist if you play it on too easy a difficulty because you're not being challenged. I don't know. End of the day, this is all just in my opinion. I prefer a challenge. That doesn't mean you have to prefer a challenge. It doesn't mean preferring a challenge is a better way to approach games. Everything I say is purely from my own perspective, from my own opinion. What I'm most interested in is knowing what you think about it. Do you prefer a challenge, or do you play games to relax? Do you prefer a more relaxed experience where you can just experience the game rather than smashing your head against the wall like I do? Let me know what you think, but it is that time again, ladies and gentlemen. We have to sign off for the day. I've got a lot to do. Oof. I've always got a lot to do, but I've even more got a lot to do because I need to get stuff done before Christmas so that I'm not working on Christmas because I don't want to work on Christmas. This will go up on Boxing Day, if my math is correct. Yes, Boxing Day. So by that point, we'll know whether or not I managed to avoid doing too much work on Christmas Day, but I digress. Thank you so much for watching. Whenever I talk about next time, and New Year's is coming up, maybe we could have a big old assessment of the year or something, or talk about plans for the future. I don't know. If there's stuff you are interested in hearing me talk about, please let me know. I would love to receive topics. Once again, for the final time now, I'm rambling. Thank you so much for watching. Whatever happens next time, and the things I just said, hope I see you there. Toodles, goodbye.